What do you call an architect, an archaeologist, a meteorologist, and a disease researcher all rolled into a furry little package? Whatever you want, it seems, like mouse bear or whistlepig or woodchuck, despite it never really chucking wood. But in this episode, we're going to use what might be the most common name for the species Marmota monax, groundhog. And we're going to dive into just a few ways these famous rodents have helped scientists out over the decades. Spoiler alert, it isn't actually their weather forecasting. You can find groundhogs across the eastern and central United States, Canada, and Alaska. They're great at building large and impressively complex underground burrows. And in addition to stealing your garden vegetables, they have some unexpected skills like climbing trees, swimming, and whistling. They also have their own holiday, Groundhog Day, February 2nd. And on that day, every year, dozens of celebrity groundhogs get to play meteorologist. If they poke out of their burrow, see their shadows, and run back underground, then we're supposed to have a full 6 more weeks of winter weather. For context, 6 weeks after February 2nd is March 16th, which is a few days before the official first day of spring. But if the groundhogs don't see their shadows and stay above ground and unbothered, they're telling us spring will come early. This particular activity evolved from a Celtic festival called Imbolc, which celebrates the halfway point between winter and spring. It's a natural time to plan for the year ahead and to look for clues about the weather for farming. Then the tradition was passed along to Germanic folklore, where a future-telling hibernating animal was added to the mix. In Europe, people looked to badgers for the weather forecast, but in North America, we had to rely on groundhogs. Unfortunately for Puxatawny Phil and his fellow prognosticators, they're not particularly good at their made-up job. For example, one meta-analysis compared over 30 years of groundhog predictions against the bloom dates of an early spring flower. On average, their 33 groundhogs got it right 50% of the time. Phil himself scored 52%. In other words, they're no more accurate than someone randomly guessing the result of a coin flip. And that might be because groundhogs have more personal reasons to come out of their burrows on February 2nd. Over winter, groundhogs enter a state of torpor, where their body temperature can drop as low as 3 degrees Celsius. Their heartbeat also slows way down from 80 beats per minute to just 5. And for months, they survive by burning through about a quarter of their body weight. This kind of hibernation is not a cozy 3-month-long nap. It's a tricky trade-off that taxes a groundhog's health and puts it at risk from predators. In fact, research has shown that groundhogs bulk up before winter so that they can both spend less time in torpor and not go as deeply into torpor. That gives them an advantage if they ever need to wake up and run. But in early February, groundhogs start to ease out of hibernation and make short trips to scout out nearby food and mates. They don't fully commit to leaving hibernation until, you guessed it, March, which is fair. I also need a month to wake up sometimes. And that's one reason why scientists are keen to study groundhogs, not to help predict the weather, but to help humans safely recover from hypothermia or decreased blood flow to the heart. But once they're awake, groundhogs get busy. They eat, they dig, they make a bunch of groundhog babies, and if they're in the right place at the right time, they can even make archaeological breakthroughs. But all science needs funding, so here's how we get ours. Thanks to Brilliant for supporting this SciShow video. Brilliant is an online learning platform designed to work for anyone, anywhere. That's why there are literally tens of millions of people learning with Brilliant all over the world. They make it possible for anyone to learn by splitting their courses into bite-sized lessons, so you can start on whatever level feels right to you, whether you're trying a new topic like programming for the first time, or you want to brush up on that master's in computer science that you got years ago. There's something for everyone at brilliant.org/SciShow. Check the QR code on the screen or the link in the description for 20% off an annual premium Brilliant subscription and the first 30 days for free. Back in 1955, amateur historian Albert Miller was wandering around some farmland west of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, when he noticed bones in a pile of dirt made by a burrowing groundhog. A closer look turned up some promising artifacts, so he stopped digging and started searching for an archaeologist to help him excavate the site. When he connected with researchers in the 1970s, their findings would challenge decades of archaeological dogma. You see, in the 1930s, scientists found some ancient spear tips in Clovis, New Mexico, Mexico that appeared to be roughly 13,000 years old. And soon, they uncovered even more of these spear tips scattered at sites all across America. Put together, these so-called Clovis points suggest that the people who made them first arrived in North America around 13,500 years ago and traveled across the continent in just a few hundred years. That's pretty fast for the Stone Age. And the evidence was so substantial that for a long time, archaeologists were sure that the Clovis people must have been the first Americans. In fact, between the 1930s and 70s, hundreds of discoveries that claimed to be older than the Clovis points were debunked. But our groundhog archaeologist didn't listen to any of those stories, because it's a groundhog and it can't speak English. Jokes aside, the site that Albert Miller and his collaborators uncovered started out as a field school where student archaeologists could learn excavation techniques. But as the team dug under the colonial glass and the ancient hearths, they found a collapsed rock shelter ceiling, and below that, stone tools that were up to 16,000 years old. That's 3,000 years older than Clovis points, and these tools and Clovis points looked nothing alike. The team published their findings in 1977 and faced a lot of pushback. But as time marched forward, their meticulous methods and ancient discoveries held up to scrutiny. And their research was supported by other teams finding even more pre-Clovis sites across the continent, presumably not with the aid of a local groundhog, though. These days, the archaeological site is called the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter, and scientists have left about a third of it unexcavated so they can make even more discoveries when new technologies get developed. The site also allows tourists for part of the year, so if you want to visit, you can pay your respects to the taxidermied groundhog named Rocky on display in the visitor center. It's not every day you get to meet a rodent that may have had a critical role in archaeology. But that's not all that groundhogs do for us. They also play a critical role in some super important medical research. Hepatitis B is a particularly nasty liver infection caused by an extremely infectious virus called hepatitis B virus. If left untreated, it can lead to liver damage, liver cancer, and death. In 2022, the World Health Organization estimated that over 250 million people around the world had a chronic hepatitis B infection, and over 1 million people were newly infected. It's a big deal. But thankfully, we've had a vaccine to prevent it since the 1980s. It's a standard part of the infant vaccination schedule in several countries, including the US. And while groundhogs were not used to create the Hep B vaccine, they are scientists' go-to lab rat, or I guess lab rodent, for learning more about how Hep B works and how to treat it. That's because groundhogs can catch their own version of the hepatitis virus called woodchuck hepatitis virus. Remember, groundhogs are just woodchucks by another name. And the woodchuck hepatitis virus acts incredibly similar to Hep B. In both cases, when the virus reaches a liver cell, the virus's DNA can get all the way into the cell's nucleus. That's where your or the groundhog's own DNA is stored. Now, most viruses have genetic material that isn't super stable. It falls apart after copying itself the one time. But both woodchuck hepatitis and Hep B have very stable circular DNA that can actually settle down in a cell's nucleus. In other words, the hepatitis B virus is protected from your usual immune system response. But researchers are hard at work developing treatments to cure chronic hepatitis B. And that research wouldn't be possible without help from those lab groundhogs. So the next time you see a groundhog searching your garden for some delicious homegrown veggies, maybe you should scare it away with a very loud, "Thank you for your contribution to society!"
Okay, great. That was awesome. Let's go ahead and get reset with the next script in the teleprompter. All right, ready?
Yep.
Your headphones.
SD 13162, take one, common marker.
What do you call an architect, an archaeologist, a meteorologist, and a disease researcher all rolled into a furry little package? Whatever you want, it seems, like mouse bear or whistle pig or woodchuck, despite it never really chucking wood. But in this episode, we're going to use what might be the most common name for the species Marmota monax, groundhog, and we're going to dive into just a few ways these famous rodents have helped scientists out over the decade. Am I in a time loop? You have to tell me if I'm in a time loop.